The Senate will come to order. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, King, Colcourse, La Mantilla, Menendez, Middleton, Miles, Nichols, Parker, Paxton, Perry, Schwertner, Sparks, Springer, West, Whitmire, Zaffarini.
A quorum is present. Please rise for the invocation to be delivered by Pastor Mark Weibel of the Highland Baptist Church in Waco, Texas.
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we humbly bow before you this morning with gratitude for your guidance in our lives. We acknowledge our dependence upon you for our daily needs. I pray for this Senate as they convene. Your word instructs us to ask you for wisdom, and it will be given to us. As this body makes decisions that affect the lives of every resident of Texas, we ask for your wisdom. We ask for guidance in decisions that involve the poor, the marginalized, the future of our state, our economic stability, the education of our children, our safety, and our ability to live life well. The challenges of the days in which we live are great, but your grace is greater. The needs of their constituents are vast, but you are more than able to meet each one. Your word instructs us to give honor to whom honor is due. I honor these who sacrificially serve us and thank you for their willingness to lead in such a time as this. Lord, let your kingdom come and your will be done today in every decision, deliberation, and direction they take. Bless this session. It is through Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Weibel. The Dean of the Senate moves to dispense of the reading of yesterday's journal. Is there an objection? The chair hears none. The motion's adopted. Chair recognizes Senator Gutierrez for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. Members, I want to direct your attention to the northern side of the gallery. If we can get all these kids from our several schools in the Uvalde area to stand up. Tracy King, our wonderful state representative, was so wonderful in helping us set this up. First off, I want to thank you all for coming to your Texas Capitol. These bright young Texans are members of the student councils. They're the future senators, the future state representatives of Texas from Batesville School, Morales Junior High School, and our kids from Uvalde High School. You guys have had a tough year, but you know what? We're Uvalde strong, we're Texas strong, we're going to be okay. And you guys are the future of this state. So I want you to welcome to your Texas Capitol. And if we could please give them a round of applause. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Gutierrez. The following message from the governor. The secretary will read the message.
To the Senate of the 88th Legislature, regular session, I ask the advice, consent, and confirmation of the Senate with respect to the following appointments. To be members of the Commission on Jail Standards, Dwayne Locke, Southlake; Andrew B. Ben Perry, Waco; Esmael Porsa, Houston. To be a member of the Texas Board of Professional Geoscientists, Mark N. Varhag, Dallas. Respectfully submitted, Greg Abbott, Governor of Texas, to nominations.
Chair recognizes Senator Middleton to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, it's my honor to introduce our Doctor of the Day today from UTMB at the Galveston and Lake City campus, Dr. Namita Bhardwaj. She served her residency at UT Houston, and she's also a family medicine doctor with a sports medicine specialty. And with her is Dr. Amy Jones, a second-year resident in family medicine at UTMB as well in Galveston and League City. And we want to extend them a warm welcome, and it seems like they brought the same temperature as we have in our hospitals too to the chamber as well today. So thank you, and thank you for all you do to keep our communities well and provide health care to so many people in Galveston County. God bless you.
Chair lays out the following resolution. The Secretary will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 354 by Blanco, commending the community action agencies of Texas.
Chair recognizes Senator Blanco on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I'm pleased to have members from the Texas Association of Community Action Agencies join us today, including President of TACA, Ms. Laura Ponce, who is also the Executive Director for Project Bravo in El Paso. For nearly 6 decades, community action agencies across Texas have long provided essential services to address and alleviate the causes and conditions of poverty for the state's most vulnerable residents. Community action agencies work to strengthen communities in times of natural and human disasters, extraordinary economic challenges, and exceptional health care crises. Some of their other assistance priorities include creating access to safe and affordable housing, reducing expenses through energy efficiency and utility payment programs, providing nutrition assistance, as well as primary and preventive health care, and promoting academic success and the development of workforce skills. By offering impactful solutions to help families achieve financial stability, community action agencies are changing the lives and making the Lone Star State a more prosperous, vibrant, and dynamic place for all. With that, I'd like to thank all community action agencies across Texas for changing people's lives, for embodying the spirit of hope, and for improving our communities. Thank you so much for all the work that you do. Welcome to your Texas Senate.
Senator Perry, you're recognized on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, thank you, Senator Blanco, for that recognition. I do have 3 representatives from Concho Valley Community Action, visiting and advocating for those they serve in West Texas. This agency serves 14 of my counties with housing assistance, weatherization, utility assistance, case management, and outreach visits. Mike, Crystal, and Tracy, give a big wave. Thank you for what you do for the underserved in West Texas.
Is there an objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. Resolution's adopted. Chair lays out the following resolution. Secretary will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 368 by Zaffarini, recognizing March 30th, 2023 as Survivors Speak Texas Day at the state capitol.
Chair recognizes Senator Zaffarini on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members, it is my pleasure to author Senate Resolution 368, recognizing March 30th as Survivors Speak Texas Day at our Capitol. Today, we recognize survivors of crime within our state and the vast contributions they have made to improving Texas public safety and criminal justice policies. Survivors Speak Texas Day would not be possible without the Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice and the Alliance for Safety and Justice. Founded in 2013, the Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice has a network of more than 100,000 persons. They have active chapters in 10 states and organize events and vigils to raise awareness for crime survivors. Founded in 2016, the Alliance for Safety and Justice has worked closely to increase victim compensation support through the Victim Services Administrative Reform and to improve the probation process. These two organizations work tirelessly to mobilize and heal communities by raising public awareness about the experiences of crime survivors impacted by trauma, gun violence, assault, and more. They also strive to reduce incarceration rates by advocating for increased funding and for community-based safety efforts. Joining us in the gallery today are, and I'll ask them to stand as I call their names, Tara Tucker, Texas State Director, Jill Henderson, Austin Chapter and Co-Coordinator, and Clarence Watson, Austin Chapter and Co-Coordinator. They're in the North Gallery, members, and I ask them to please rise and be welcome to the Texas Senate as I move adoption of Senate Resolution 368.
Is there an objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The resolution is adopted. Members, if there are no objections, I would like to postpone the reading and referral of bills until the end of today's session. Is there an objection? Chair hears none. Members, that concludes the morning call. Senator Huffman, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business and take up and consider committee substitute Senate Bill 1045.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. At this time, I move to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider the committee substitute to Senate Bill 1045. Members, due to statutory venue requirements, most of the cases involving the state of Texas are currently filed in Travis County and appealed to the Third Court of Appeals in Austin. The Third Court of Appeals hears appeals from a 24-county area, but the district's population is anchored by Travis County. Consequently, although the Third Court hears cases impacting the entire state, its judges are effectively elected by the voters of a single county, that being Travis County. Lawsuits against the state or state agencies typically contain complex and nuanced legal issues and take significant time to resolve. They are so time intensive that the Third Court of Appeals has been given additional resources to handle them. Even so, the data demonstrates that the Third Court of Appeals consistently divests itself of the largest amount of cases year after year, meaning many cases involving the state are heard in the regional intermediate appellate court that has the bandwidth to hear it. This means that judges currently handling these cases have varying levels of experience in such specialized matters, sometimes leading to incorrect and inconsistent results for the state and other litigants. The 15th Intermediate Court of Appeals will consist of a Chief Justice and 4 justices, all who will be elected statewide. The court will not hear criminal matters and will have exclusive intermediate appellate jurisdiction over civil cases brought by or against the state or a state agency, or by or against an officer or employee of the state, civil cases in which a party to the case files a petition, motion, or other pleading challenging the constitutionality of a state statute, and in which the Attorney General is a party to the case, or any other matter as provided by law. The Texas Supreme Court will be given rulemaking authority to transfer cases and proceedings mistakenly filed in the court to the Court of Appeals having proper jurisdiction, and to transfer cases from another intermediate appellate court to the new court. In conclusion, creating a 15th Intermediate Court of Appeals with statewide jurisdiction of civil cases brought by or against the state will allow judges to apply specialized precedent in subject areas important to the entire state. These are not regional issues, they are issues of statewide concern. Judges selected statewide should be deciding them, and they should be experts in these types of cases. Texas has demonstrated a preference for specialty courts, and we should continue with this on the appellate level. I move to suspend the rules, Mr. President.
Senator Birdwell, what purpose?
Question of the author, Mr.
Do you
President.
yield?
Yes.
Senator Huffman, thank you for bringing this. What is the mechanism by which those judges originally arrived to this newly constituted court?
They will originally be appointed. That's how we're going to get started. But then they will be elected at the next election after that. I will say that the House author also has an HJR that will just stagger the terms for election after they're appointed. But I know your concern is, are they elected? Yes, they are, but we start out, like we do any new court, we start out with an appointment, as I know you're familiar with.
But your bill does not bracket them for this judge 2 years. The governor appoints them all, but then one has to get, the House bill does that, but yours doesn't.
Well, it takes a constitutional amendment to do that, so the House has that additional constitutional amendment, because to stagger the terms requires a constitutional amendment.
Right.
That's just the law.
Should the House bill not, the House constitutional amendment not pass, then all 3 of these judges every 6 years, based upon the way your bill's structured, would all be up at the same time rather than staggered like the other courts.
That's correct. And, and at some point in the future, someone could try to file the JR. I was trying to keep it simple, to be honest.
Thank you, madam.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Eckhart, what purpose? I need to clear the field, members over there, senators. Senator King, Senator Zaffarini, we need to clear the field. We have a senator speaking across the room, sorry.
Thank you.
You're recognized. What purpose?
To ask questions of the author.
Do you yield?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Huffman. How is it a problem that some of these cases, when the Third Court of Appeals has too heavy a docket, that some of these cases are moved through the already existing process to other courts of appeals?
I'm sorry, your question is how is the problem? I didn't hear your
How is that a problem? That if and when there are too many cases at the Third Court of Appeals, that they transfer some of these cases to other courts of appeals?
I'm not positive I understand your question, but the bill specifically states that the cases that have jurisdiction, the statewide interest case, the cases where a constitutionality of a state law is questioned, those cases cannot be transferred out of the new 15th Court of Appeals. So the law, this new bill will provide those cannot be transferred out.
But do you agree with me that under the current circumstance, without this law, that the Third Court of Appeals and also any court of appeals can move cases to other courts to even out the dockets across the state?
Senator Eckhart, it's done routinely. Most of the cases are by docket transferred, sent all over the state. That's what's happening right now.
Now, you state that part of the intention in this bill is to solve for what you believe is a lack of expertise necessary for these types of cases.
Senator Eckhart, I have no intent, or is not my intention, to insult the justices on the Third Court of Appeals. I don't even know them, okay? I'm sure they're fabulous justices. This is not about a personal belief about someone's ineffectiveness. It is simply a desire for the cases that have statewide interest to be handled by justices that are elected statewide. That's the intent of the legislation.
And I do see that it does require that the judges be elected statewide, but it doesn't require any additional expertise with regards to the exclusive subject matter created in this court, correct?
Correct. We're not setting specific qualifications. I would hope that those who chose to either try to be appointed initially or to later run would have an interest and an expertise in the area. They will have to campaign statewide and sell themselves to the voter as a justice who can handle this unique caseload.
So
and I rely on the voters to make the appropriate decision.
So other than statewide election, there is no other change to the selection criteria for these judges?
There's no, other than what's required already under the Constitution to be qualified to serve as a justice or a judge, there's nothing in addition, correct?
But I suppose that statewide election, as evidenced by how our Texas Supreme Court is selected statewide, is your exemplar here. Is that a fair statement?
Elected statewide, have to campaign statewide and sell your qualifications to the voter as being qualified to serve on a court with this type of jurisdiction, yes.
So would it be fair to say that this is like a mini Supreme Court on these specific types of cases?
No.
Why not allow direct appeal from trial court straight to our existing Supreme Court?
Well, Senator Eckhart, I'm sure that, if we sat down in a room, there would be various ways that a person could come up with trying to address this issue. That may be your approach. You can certainly file your own legislation and argue that point. This is the way that I chose to offer the legislation and to present the issue to the Senate.
So if we were to have a direct appeal from trial court on these exclusive issues to the Texas Supreme Court, there would be no additional cost. But under this bill, this 15th Court of Appeals with this exclusive jurisdiction elected statewide would have a biennial cost of an additional $6 million.
Yes, Senator Eckhart, as you know, we are a growing state, growing in population, in diversity, in business complex issues, in the state government becomes more and more complex. Look at our budget of $184 billion, many complex issues. As the state grows, it seems very reasonable as the finance chair to spend $6 million to organize and run a court that will serve the entire state. Sounds like a bargain to me.
So if a litigant gets a decision out of the 15th Court of Appeals that litigant is not satisfied with, they still have a right of appeal to the Texas Supreme Court for another bite with another panel of statewide judges.
Correct, just as any litigant would in any of the other appellate courts. As you know, the Supreme Court takes a very small amount, limited amount of appeals, very small, and they go through their process of who they will hear, and that's their process, but it's a small amount.
And you stated that one of the purposes of this bill is to correct for unevenness in decisions through the through the courts of appeals. Isn't that the function of the Texas Supreme Court, to select those cases that will resolve conflict or inconsistency in the courts of appeals decisions?
I believe that is one of the objectives of the Supreme Court. I think we all know that there are very often litigants left with unhappiness about a decision and disappointed that the Supreme Court chose not to hear their appeal, but it happens all the time. You're a lawyer, you've been in a courtroom, you know what happens. One person leaves happy, one person leaves unhappy. That's just the way it works. So there's always going to be some who wish they could have appealed or been granted an appeal, but it just, didn't work out that way for them.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Of course. Thank you, Senator Eckhart.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Gutierrez, what purpose?
Would the gentlelady yield?
Do you yield?
Yes.
Just really one question, or
okay,
maybe two. Would you take single-member districts?
I like the plan as I have it set up, but thank you for offering.
All right. Well, I'm not proposing an amendment, but maybe as the bill kind of works its way through the process in the House and otherwise, maybe we can have that discussion offline.
I see this a little differently. I know in the business court they're discussing, electing from different areas and so forth. I don't know where that is in the process, so I'm not speaking for anyone, but I believe the House has talked about that.
I don't pretend to, draw maps with you one way or another.
Yes.
I think that it's a concept that I understand where you're coming from. I'm a little concerned about kind of creating larger government, but I still understand the concerns that you have. And I just want to maybe be part of a dialogue on maybe looking at single-member districts, depending on what happens to the bill on the other side.
I don't want to give you any false hope, but that's not on the agenda. So thank you for thinking outside the box like you always do.
Hope springs eternal.
Well, that's what they say.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Gutierrez.
Members, the motion is on suspension of the rules. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart.
19 ayes, 12 nays. Rules are suspended. Chair lays out in second reading. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 1095. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute, Senate Bill 1045, relating to the creation of the 15th Court of Appeals.
You're recognized on passage to engrossment.
I move passage to engrossment of the committee substitute, Senate Bill 1045.
Secretary will call the roll when ready.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
19 ayes, 12 nays. The bill passes to engrossment, and you'll hold here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Birdwell, you're recognized to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 29.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business, take up and consider Senate Bill 29. Members, 3 years after the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, numerous cities throughout the nation still continue to impose upon its citizens a hodgepodge of restrictive mandates regarding COVID-19. Executive orders G838 and G839 currently prohibit local governments from shutting down schools and businesses and implementing mask mandates and vaccine mandates. If the state disaster declaration is not renewed, then these executive orders will lack the effect of law, and local governments across Texas will have the ability to restrict Texas freedoms in the name of protecting them against COVID-19. Senate Bill 29 would preclude the possibility of state and local governments of this state from re-implementing a patchwork of restricted COVID-19 mandates upon Texans by implementing the following 3 items. First, the bill prohibits the state government, local governments, or other political subdivisions of the state from implementing a mask mandate in response to COVID-19. Second, the bill prohibits the state and local governments or other political subdivisions of the state from imposing a COVID-19 vaccine mandate. And finally, the bill prohibits the state government, local governments, and other political subdivisions of the state from implementing or imposing a mandate that would require the closure of a private business, public school, open enrollment charter school, or private school to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Members, also want to clarify that these prohibitions include not just COVID-19, but all of its variants. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Secretary will call the roll on suspension.
Okay. Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
20 ayes, 11 nays. The rule is suspended. Chair lays on second reading. Senate Bill 29. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 29, relating to prohibited governmental entity implementation or enforcement of a vaccine mandate.
You're recognized. Passage to engrossment.
Move passage to engrossment, Mr. President.
Secretary will call the roll when ready.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton.
20 ayes and 11 nays. We'll hold right there.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Thank you.
That's okay. Josh sent me the list. It wasn't on it. I just was looking at all the others. I was want to make sure.
Senator Huffman, you're recognized to suspend the 3-day rule on committee substitute for Senate Bill 1045.
So moved, Mr. President.
Let me give the Secretary time to get the votes in.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
25 ayes, 6 nays. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out third reading and final passage. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 1045. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 1045, relating to the creation of the 15th Court of Appeals.
Senator Johnson, for a question.
To speak on the bill, Mr. President.
You're recognized.
Thank you very much. Senator Huffman, you and I have discussed this bill. It's going to pass. Perhaps in the process there will be some changes made. I wanted to raise a few concerns with the bill. First of all, it is a statewide court of appeals, which is distinct from all the other 14 courts of appeals that we have. It's sort of, and we had testimony to this from some court of appeals judges, it delocalizes the appellate process and essentially relegates it to a single monopartisan body. And if, whatever point in time we are at, whoever's controlling politically, that court will be 100% that party. They will be exclusively from big cities. Making problems worse, we are possibly going to see the creation of business courts in Texas. And as currently structured, the relationship between those business courts and this new statewide court of appeal will result in business cases, private litigants having their disputes go directly from the sort of district court level business court onto a statewide court of appeal. So you'll have a pair of private litigants from East Texas who ordinarily would hear their dispute on appeal by an appellate court elected by the people of East Texas, is now going to a statewide court of appeal. So we are really seeing a diminishment of the participation around the state of everybody in the process. Under our current appellate court system, we have appellate courts throughout the state. If there is a disagreement among those appellate courts, that disagreement is resolved at the Supreme Court level. We have the benefit, therefore, of input from around the state, and we have a court of highest authority that will resolve it where there's discrepancy. We will lose that at the appellate court level at this point and kind of just funnel everything into one single channel, and I think that's quite troubling. Finally, I think we may have a jurisdictional problem with the bill that could be addressed in this process somewhere, and that is that very expansive jurisdiction. The idea is that this court would be a specialist in matters relating to the state, and Senator Huffman, I acknowledge some concerns. Essentially, the voters of the 3rd District Court of Appeals are choosing the judges who decide all of these matters, which kind of excludes the rest of the state. And I think it's commendable that this bill addresses that perhaps shortcoming in the way things are structured right now. I think a better way to handle it would be to blow up the jurisdiction over state matters and let every court of appeals see them. If this is the avenue, so be it. But it also would give that court jurisdiction over matters related to or anything that it has jurisdiction over. And I know that in a bankruptcy context, the words related to for bankruptcy court jurisdiction is the result of unending litigation. So ironically, we could be creating more litigation and having a vast, expansive jurisdiction of this single court of appeals instead of handling it the way we always do. So I don't really see a need for this bill. If it does go forward, I hope it gets changed in the process along the lines, and I wanted to make those known. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Senator Huffman.
Thank you, Senator. The motion is on passage, final passage. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
19 ayes, 12 nays. The bill is finally passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Hancock, you're recognized. Senator Hinojosa and Senator Colcourse, you're in front of Senator Hancock for a moment. There you go. Senator Hancock, you're recognized. Suspend the regular order of business before we go to final passage. On Senate Bill 936.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider Senate Bill 936.
Secretary will call the roll when ready.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
19 ayes, 12 nays. Rules are suspended. The chair now lays out on third reading, final passage, Senate Bill 936. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 936, relating to certain agreements with collective bargaining organizations related to certain publicly funded public work contracts.
You're recognized on final passage.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Secretary will call the roll when ready.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
19 ayes, 12 nays. Bill's finally passed. Thank you very much. Senator Colcourse, you're recognized on Senate Bill 25. Suspend the regular order of business.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business and take up and consider at this time Senate Bill 25. Senate Bill 25 is a part of a comprehensive package to dramatically increase funding to nursing education and training programs, including those addressed in Senate Bill 25. It revives and amends an existing scholarship and loan program in statute from the 71st legislature that has not been funded, and we are funding it in our state budget as proposed in Senate Bill 1, which will eventually become House Bill 1. This fulfills, Mr. President, one of our goals to create scholarships for nursing students. The bill also expands the faculty loan repayment program to include part-time faculty. This program improves access to nursing education programs by encouraging qualified nurses to serve as faculty at eligible Texas institutions of higher education through loan repayment assistance. The bill also changes the faculty loan repayment amount from a cap of $7,000 annually to a figure to be determined by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, enabling more funding to be provided to recipients. And finally, the bill extends the Nursing Innovation Grant Program until 2027, and that program provides grants to higher education institutions to promote the education, recruitment, and retention of nursing students and qualified faculty. Members, I want to thank so many of you for being a joint author and a co-author on this bill. I think it's going to make a real difference in our nursing workforce shortage, in being able to recover from the pandemic and to make advances as our state grows. So, Mr. President, it is an honor to move to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 25.
Senator Hinojosa, what purpose?
Well, Senator Colcourse, yield.
Do you yield?
I do.
Senator Colcourse, thank you very much for this bill. As you know, we face many challenges in our dealing with our nursing shortages. And we've been working on this type of legislation for a long time. I know in 2013, I authored Senate Bill 1258, again, trying to find loan repayment assistance to our nurses. And it's been such a battle as we passed different type of legislation, and the funding mechanism was always a challenge, if you will. So now we will fully fund our nursing programs, loan repayment, but trying to help and encourage more nurses, more people to apply to become a nurse now that they know they'll get some financial assistance from the state. So I thank you for working on this bill. I am a co-author of the bill, and to me, I'm just so happy to see us continue to make progress in trying to address the nursing shortage. They're key to our healthcare system. So thank you for your leadership on this bill.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. And one of the things that I also like in the bill is that we're going to encourage part-time faculty. As you know, the pipeline, we rejected, I know one university, I think it was UTA, testified that they rejected over 15,000 applicants I think it was last year, because they didn't have enough program space, the rotation spots, et cetera. So it's not going to happen overnight, but I think over a period of the next few years, we're going to be able to meet the demand, or at least close the gap of what the demand is right now.
And that was in 2019, where I had Senate Bill 358 to deal with part-time students, the ones that become nurses. So again, thank you for this bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and thank you for the bills that you're bringing forward to the Health and Human Services Committee as well. I will have an amendment that will clarify one part of this, but that's upcoming, and so thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any objection? Hearing none. Rules are suspended. Chair lays that on second reading. Senate Bill 25. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 25, relating to support for nursing-related post-secondary education, including scholarships to nursing students, loan repayment assistance to nurses and nursing faculty, and grants to nursing education programs.
There is an amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor Amendment Number 1 by Colcourse.
You're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we attempted a committee substitute. The substitute didn't quite meet what we were doing, and we wanted to move this bill, and so I decided to do the amendment on the floor, and that is, this amendment clarifies the eligibility for nursing scholarship program and student loan forgiveness programs to only students at public institutions of higher education and Western Governors University, WGU. We have capped the amount of funding for WGU students at 10% of the availability of funding to ensure as much as possible goes to our public university nursing students. WGU has the second largest nursing program in Texas. I mentioned UTA in my opening remarks is number 1. So in consultation with several people, we are including them for eligibility, capping them at 10%. And so, Mr. President, I move adoption of floor amendment number 1.
Any objection? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted. You recognize passage to engrossment.
So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Bill passes to engrossment. You're recognized. Don't worry about that paper. Senator Betancourt will be happy to help you with that paper on the floor over there. Or Drew Springer, Senator Springer. All these gentlemen that leaped to your help. Thank you.
I love that. I love it. That was Mr. President, that was Senator Hinojosa's suggestions on another bill that I'm working on. So lots of input here. If anyone's watching on television, we talk about a lot of different bills and we take each other's suggestions on how to make bills better. So.
We now know who's faster out of their chair. Springer over Betancourt, round 1. Springer goes on to the next bracket. You're recognized to suspend the regular order of business.
So moved, Mr. President.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell.
31 ayes, no nays. Rules suspended. Chair lays out in third reading and final passage Senate Bill 25. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 25 relating to support for nursing-related post-secondary education.
You're recognized in final passage.
Mr. President, as I move final passage, I remember in your inaugural speech, just out here on the steps, and you were, it was a beautiful, beautiful January Tuesday, and you stood up there and you proclaimed that we were going to give more opportunities to nursing students, and this is a fulfillment of that. Thank you for the honor of carrying this. Thank you to all my co-authors and a 31-0 vote to, again, meet the nursing needs of our great state of Texas in the future. I move final passage.
Thank you, Senator. You know, I can create ideas, but it takes senators to execute them and design them and members to follow. So I want to thank you for doing that. That's actually my statement. Thank you for designing this plan out of an idea. And for everyone watching, we just want to remind people who have children or grandchildren in or going to college, this is now a scholarship for future nurses, assuming the House passes it. We also have full scholarships for people who go into law enforcement that we passed in the past, and for math and science teachers. So we have a lot of scholarships available in areas of need. We don't have enough math teachers, science teachers, law enforcement, and now nurses. So this is the next part of that we passed over the years, and thank you for moving forward. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
31 ayes, no nays. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Mr. Doorkeeper.
Mr. President, there's a message from the House.
Please admit the messenger.
Mr. President, I'm directed by the House to inform the Senate that the House has taken the following action. The House has passed the following measures. HB 300 by Howard, relating...
Thank you, Mr. Messenger. Members, we're waiting on an amendment for a bill.
Members, we're just waiting on some amendments. Don't mean to keep you sitting there. Just waiting for some amendments to be worked out. Senator Middleton, as a matter of postponed business, you're recognized to suspend the regular order of business on, I'm sorry. That's right. We're starting all over with you. I'm sorry. The chair lays out as a matter of postponed business committee substitute for Senate Bill 796. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute, Senate Bill 796, relating to arbitration provisions and surplus lines insurance contracts.
You're recognized on a passage to engrossment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I had a microphone problem on this bill the other day, and the bill book didn't show it back to my desk, so we're back onto it today. It seems that everything's reconnected just fine, except the light's not working so good now, I think, because we had to recover the cord here. But Senate Bill 796 and the committee substitute to Senate Bill 796, a very simple bill, just requires for our surplus lines of insurance that arbitration be conducted in the state of Texas under Texas law. And with that, I move passage to engrossment of committee substitute for Senate Bill 796.
Are there any objections? Hearing none. Bill passed to engrossment. You're recognized to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the constitutional rule that bills be read on 3 several days for the committee substitute to Senate Bill 796.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt.
31 ayes and no nays. The rule suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage committee substitute for Senate Bill 796. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute, Senate Bill 796, relating to arbitration provisions and surplus lines insurance contracts.
You're recognized on final passage.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move final passage on committee substitute for Senate Bill 796.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
Your bill is finally, after a week and a broken microphone, of passing. Congratulations. You notice, Senator, there was no applause for that. I just want to let you know. You're still a freshman. Applause comes very rarely. Chair lays out another bill of postponed business. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 895. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute, Senate Bill 895, relating to the regulation of money services businesses.
Members, just to bring you up to date on this bill, when we stopped the other day, we were on floor amendment number 1. So, Senator Johnson, you're recognized on floor amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. After very productive, extensive conversations among the members and some good work by staff, I think we have a consensus on floor amendment number 1, and I move adoption.
I'm going to let everyone get a copy of it. Senator Betancourt, what purpose?
Questions of the author?
Do you yield?
I do.
And Senator Johnson, in going through significant discussions with Senator Parker in my office, we basically went through all the 6 major changes in the amendment. And as usual, given the velocity of bills this year, about half of them were alleged council draft errors, and then the commission obviously added some other, requests into it. So I think we've got a good amendment, coupled specifically with Senator Colcourt's amendment, because the CDC issue needs to be resolved, which is why when we were looking at your amendment, we wanted to make sure that that was not an issue. True?
It is absolutely true, and Senator Betancourt, I appreciate the scrutiny you've given to this bill. It is a large bill. It does take a model code and bring it into Texas law. It has to be woven into several areas of the law, and it can create inconsistencies, and it's quite a task, and Ledge Council and the department have worked together to bring us these updates. You've vetted it. We've had good staff from multiple offices looking at this, and conversations with the department. So we're in good shape on this bill, and we'll be accepting Senator Kolkhorst's amendment.
Right. I just want to make sure you're going to be accepting Senator Kolkhorst's amendment. And I think Senator Parker's background to this has been very helpful. And also we have obviously one of the best banking commissioners in the country, because I don't think a lot of folks can stack up to Cooper's experience. But I appreciate you letting us take a look at that, because especially given the fluctuations we've seen in the virtual currency world, as well as what happened with the Silicon Valley, bank situation, and we're not out of this yet. We've got at least another month or so to go before we know. I think it's important to be able to look at these bills, and I want to thank you for your time, and also thank you for supporting Senator Kolkhorst's amendment as well.
Thank you, Senator. And it is important that the members have confidence in this bill, and you've given people more confidence.
Because we have to have confidence in our own,
yes, we
our
do.
own banking system,
as well as Senator Parker. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Members, any objection on the amendment? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted. Members, there's a following amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 2 by Kolkhorst.
Senator Kolkhorst, explain your amendment. You're recognized to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Johnson, for working with us on this. There have been a lot of questions about it, and there should be, actually, when we do things like this. And so, very simple amendment, members, that during the Business and Commerce hearing on Senate Bill 895, we heard testimony about concerns, potentially the adoption of a centralized digital currency. This amendment makes it crystal clear that Senate Bill 895 does not authorize the creation of a centralized bank digital currency or any other action that prohibits or limits the use of paper currency. So thank you again for your work on this complex bill, and I look forward to helping you see it through to the end and make sure that we've done the right thing for Texas.
Thank you, Senator Kolkhorst. Members, the amendment is acceptable to the author. In fact, I thank Senator Kolkhorst for bringing it. It is critically important that the body have confidence in this bill, and Senator Kolkhorst, your amendment brings greater confidence to what the bill does and, importantly, does not do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I move
Senator
adoption.
Parker, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just like to have an inquiry with the chair.
Do you yield?
I do.
Senator Kolkhorst.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for bringing forward this excellent amendment. I think it'd just be beneficial for the citizens of Texas to understand why we're prohibiting CBDC, so central bank digital currency. From my perspective, and I know from most people view this way, the dollar, the U.S. dollar, is the reserve currency of the world, and maintaining that position is critical to the future of America's economic success, maintaining our hegemonic influence globally. And so it is my perspective, as it is yours, that CBDCs would do nothing but damage, potentially, the standing of our dollar on a global basis, and therefore be very much something that would be a destabilizer for the United States economically. So I just want to thank you for prohibiting this. We have a separate SCR that we're bringing forward this session. I think it's SCR 25. That sends a clear message to Washington not to mess with this, that's bad policy, and that's what we're just prohibiting here on a bipartisan basis in Texas, because it is the right thing to do, that we need to say no to this horrific concept of CBDC here in the state of Texas.
Senator Parker, I wish I could take that and make that a clip, your first about 5 or 6 sentences right there, and put it all over the United States, every state legislature to understand that, and the United States Congress to understand the standing in the world that we have with the U.S. dollar and the importance of it. And so I'm very happy, proud to author this amendment, and thank you for SCR 25. And we have to, again, continue to work with the United States Congress on this concept to make sure that we don't undermine the United States in our standing in the world.
Precisely. I mean, the dollar's under more threat today than it ever has before.
100%.
And we need to make certain that we passionately protect our American way of life and our economic strength. So thank you very much, Senator, for bringing the amendment.
100%. And I'm glad that you brought up the point. It's very bipartisan. Sometimes it gets skewed one way or the other. But on this floor, we understand the importance of it. Thank you, Senator Johnson, for your leadership on this. I look forward to working with both of you and this entire Senate as we move forward. So thank you.
Both.
Senator Johnson, the amendment's acceptable?
Amendment is acceptable.
Any objection? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted. You're now recognized for passage to engrossment.
Move passage to engrossment.
Any objection? Hearing none, bill passed to engrossment. You're recognized to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved.
Secretary will call the roll when ready.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
30 ayes, 1 nay. The bill is passed. The constitutional 3-day rule is suspended. Chair now lays out in third reading and final passage Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 895. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee Substitute, Senate Bill 895, relating to the regulation of money services businesses.
You're recognized on final passage.
I move final passage of Committee Substitute Senate Bill 895.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
30 ayes and 1 nay. Your bill is finally passed. Congratulations.
President and members.
Members, the following motion in writing. Secretary will read the motion.
Motion in writing. Mr. President, the following members hereby request to suspend Senate Bill 7.07B to permit the introduction of bills and resolutions as follows. Senate Bill 2567 by West, Senate Bill 2573 by Nichols, Senate Bill 2581 by Miles, SCR 36 by Hughes, and SCR 38 by Colcourse.
Following motion. Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is adopted. Following bills and resolutions on first reading in reference to committee, the Secretary will read the bills and resolutions.
House Bill 300 to Finance, House Bill 446 to Health and Human Services, House Bill 590 to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs, House Bill 608 to Local Government, SCR 36 by Hughes, designating Mineola as the official sweets capital of Texas, to administration. SCR 38 by Colcourse, designating April 6th as Texas High School Coaches Day, to administration. Senate Bill 2216 by Blanco et al. Relating to the awarding of grants to certain entities for Homeland Security expenses to border security. Senate Bill 2217 by Blanco et al. Relating to requiring state agencies participating in Operation Lone Star to develop and report performance measures on the agency's operations to border security. Senate Bill 2219 by Blanco et al. Relating to the funding categories of the Unified Transportation Program to transportation. Senate Bill 2567 by West relating to the issuance of temporary tags and license plates by a motor vehicle dealer to transportation. Senate Bill 2568 by Lamantia relating to the powers of the Hidalgo County Drainage District Number 1 to local government. Senate Bill 2573 by Nichols relating to the jurisdiction of the 411th District Court and of the County Court at Law of Polk County to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 2578 by Johnson et al. Relating to the Upper Guadalupe River Authority to water, agriculture, and rural affairs. Senate Bill 2580 by Nichols relating to the creation of the Liberty County Municipal Utility District Number 12 to local government. Senate Bill 2581 by Miles relating to the service area of the Houston Community College System District to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 2582 by Johnson et al. Relating to the San Antonio River Authority to water, agriculture, and rural affairs.
Following motion in writing, Secretary will read the motion.
Mr. President, I move suspension of Senate Rule 5.14, the intent calendar rule, in order to move the intent calendar deadline to noon tomorrow. Motion by Hall.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Members, we have just extended the deadline for the intent calendar for Monday. It's been extended till noon tomorrow to get your bills on for Monday. So staffs, if you're listening, remind your senators that they have until noon tomorrow. Members, also, we just referred House bills to committee. When we get them, we like to refer them. The sooner we get them, the better it is to give those bills a chance to be heard and passed. So we have referred our first House bills, the first ones we've received, to committee already. Members, the President's desk is clear. Are there any announcements? No announcements? Senator Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. President and members. The Senate Committee on Nominations will meet Monday, April the 3rd, 8 a.m. in room E1016. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Senator Birdwell for an announcement.
Yes, sir. Mr. President and members, I move to suspend the 24-hour posting rule in accordance with Senate Rules 11.10 and 11.18 so that the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Economic Development can meet upon adjournment today, Thursday, March 30th, in the Senate Press Room 2E9 to consider and vote on 2 pending bills. Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Thank you. Senator Hughes for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Committee on State Affairs will resume its hearing here in the chamber at 1:20 this afternoon. State Affairs resumes 1:20 this afternoon here in the chamber.
The chair recognizes Senator Zaffarini for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members, I move that the Senate recess until 9 a.m. Monday, April 3rd, for the consideration of a local and uncontested calendar, pending the receipt of committee reports. Upon the conclusion of the local and uncontested calendar, I move that the Senate adjourn until 2 p.m. Monday, April 3rd. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is adopted. The Senate stands in recess until 9 a.m. April 3rd, pending the receipt of committee reports. I know a lot of you have committee work to do, so you're on your way.